They were the ultimate TV heroes of the 1980s. Bold, brilliant, and always one step ahead. The A-Team, 1983 to 1987, wasn't just a hit action series. It was a cultural phenomenon, filled with explosive stunts, unforgettable one-liners, and a cast of larger-than-life characters. But while fans still remember their daring escapes and witty banter, the real lives of some of the actors behind the iconic roles were far more complex and heartbreaking. Over the years, several beloved cast members have tragically passed away, leaving behind legacies marked by personal pain, quiet struggles, and moments of darkness hidden behind their tough guy personas. In this emotional look back, we uncover the untold tragedies and celebrate the lives of the A-Team stars we've lost. George Peppard was born on October 1, 1928, and began portraying Colonel John Hannibal Smith in the A-Team in 1983 at the age of 55. As the mastermind of the A-Team group, Hannibal was cunning, unshakably confident, and a lover of chaos, a persona Peppard played with effortless cool. Born in Detroit to a drunk, abusive father and an overbearing mother who pushed him into the arts, Peppard grew up emotionally neglected, with a brittle ego formed in childhood and carried into adulthood. Though he found early film success in Breakfast at Tiffany's, his career trajectory soon spiraled due to his increasingly erratic behavior. Peppard's career was punctuated by hostility. He openly clashed with producers, directors, and co-stars, earning a reputation as arrogant, sexist, and combative. He was infamously fired from Dynasty just days into filming for making misogynistic remarks and refusing to take direction. His biggest career disaster came when he walked off the set of The Bravos, a Western TV movie, after a drunken outburst, prompting Paramount to sue him for breach of contract. Privately, his life was no less chaotic. He was married 5 times, including to actress Elizabeth Ashley, with whom he shared a son and an intensely toxic relationship filled with jealousy, screaming fights, and mutual infidelity. His son Christian later admitted he barely knew his father, describing him as present in body, but absent in heart. Peppard battled alcoholism until 1978, when he finally got sober, though the damage to his reputation was irreversible. His financial situation fluctuated wildly, with multiple IRS audits and failed investments draining his wealth. In the 1980s, he was banned from NBC game shows after making on-air slurs about fellow actors in Hollywood politics. His health declined sharply in the early 1990s due to smoking-induced lung cancer, leading to pneumonia complications. He died on May 8, 1994, at age 65 in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $2.5 million, a relatively modest sum for a man who once commanded high salaries. Robert Vaughn was born on November 22, 1932, and joined the A-Team in 1986 at the age of 54, portraying General Hunt Stockwell, a manipulative government handler who lured the team into covert missions with vague promises of pardon. Stockwell's cold demeanor and chessmaster mind made him one of the show's most polarizing late additions. Vaughn infused the role with his signature sophistication and mystery, drawing admiration for his ability to project both charm and menace. But few knew the tortured past behind the polished facade. Vaughn's childhood was marked by loneliness. He never knew his father and was raised by his stage actress mother in a nomadic life of financial instability and emotional neglect. Despite later academic accolades, including a PhD, Vaughn struggled privately with feelings of inferiority and self-doubt. His career had highs, the man from UNCLE, but also humiliating lows, including being blacklisted by studios for his anti-Vietnam War stance and a disastrous film project in the 70s that nearly ended his career. Behind the scenes, Vaughn was known as combative with directors, prone to sudden rants, and even accused by one producer of attempting to rewrite entire scripts to make himself look superior. His personal life, though largely hidden from the tabloids, was rife with complications. A long affair with a married socialite ended in scandal and threats of legal action, and his marriage to Linda Staub, though lasting, was riddled with separations and bitter rumors. Vaughn died on November 11, 2016, from leukemia in Ridgefield, Connecticut, just 11 days before turning 84. At the time of his death, his net worth stood at approximately $10 million, bolstered by royalties, book deals, and property holdings in California. Despite his outward elegance, Vaughn's life was a silent war of intellect, ego, and buried pain, a Hollywood enigma to the very end. Lance LeGault was born on May 2, 1935, and first appeared as Colonel Roderick Decker in the A-Team in 1983 at the age of 48. In the role of Decker, he portrayed the no-nonsense military antagonist with relentless authority, a hunter obsessed with capturing the rogue team. But behind the uniform was a man burdened by a lifetime of personal torment and unhealed wounds. Born in Chicago and raised in abject poverty, Lance was placed in an orphanage as a young child after his father's death and mother's breakdown. He bounced between institutions, often escaping into fantasy and violence as a form of emotional protection. To survive, he lied about his age to get work in slaughterhouses and rail yards, and at times lived out of his car. His entry into entertainment came through sheer force of will, first as a stunt double for Elvis Presley, then in bit parts that grew into villainous TV roles. But the fame was never stable. He was chronically underpaid, often exploited, and pigeonholed into roles that reflected his rough upbringing. In the 1970s, LeGault fell into a deep depression after a failed music career. He had tried launching a country rock album, which flopped disastrously, costing him his savings. His darkest career moment was a violent altercation on the set of Stripes, where multiple witnesses claim he assaulted a production assistant during a drug-fueled meltdown. Though the incident was buried by the studio, it caused major casting directors to blacklist him quietly. Off-screen, LeGault was known for his erratic behavior, mood swings, and long disappearances, allegedly to deal with substance withdrawals. He married only once to Teresa LeGault and had 4 children, though one daughter later alleged in court filings that he was a ghost father who emotionally abandoned them. Friends noted that he hoarded military memorabilia and suffered paranoia late in life, believing former colleagues were conspiring against him. LeGault died of heart failure on September 10, 2012, in Los Angeles at the age of 77. His estate, which included a modest ranch and vintage vehicles, was estimated at $1 million. Red West, born Robert Gene West on March 8, 1936, played lieutenant. Trask and Red Avery in the A-Team starting in 1983 at the age of 47. In the series, he embodied the hard-edged, stone-faced antagonist whose quiet menace added a visceral tension to every scene he entered. Born in Memphis into a poor Southern family, West endured a turbulent childhood marked by violence and emotional neglect. His father was a strict, unforgiving disciplinarian, and West reportedly suffered both physical and emotional abuse, which hardened him from a young age. He was mocked for his aggressive behavior, labeled a troublemaker in school, and expelled more than once. He learned to hide emotion behind a clenched jaw and clenched fists. His career took off, not in Hollywood, but as a member of Elvis Presley's entourage, acting as a bodyguard and friend. But loyalty turned into scandal when he co-authored the notorious book Elvis: What Happened, just weeks before Presley's death. It was marketed as a desperate cry to save Elvis, but many saw it as a cold betrayal. West was labeled a profiteer and opportunist, fired by Elvis's father, and cut off from the Presley estate. His acting career was shadowed by this stain. Studios quietly avoided him, and he was known for being hot-headed and intimidating on set. He once physically assaulted a photographer outside a bar and was nearly blacklisted after allegedly threatening a director during a dispute over billing. His worst failure came in the late 80s when he was cast in a recurring role on a major drama, only to be fired after 3 episodes for aggressive conduct. In his personal life, things fared no better. Though married to Pat Boyd, their relationship was filled with volatility and long separations. His children kept their distance. One son publicly refused to attend his funeral. He suffered multiple strokes in his later years and lived a largely reclusive life. Red West died on July 18, 2017, in Memphis from an aortic aneurysm at age 81. At the time of his death, he owned a modest home, received residual checks, and had a net worth of roughly $2 million, though much of it came from the book that destroyed his reputation. Danny Wells, born Jack Westelman on April 7, 1941, took on supporting roles in the A-Team in 1983, portraying quirky characters like Artie Simmons and a neurotic director, beginning his run at age 42. He brought an oddball energy to the series, standing in stark contrast to the show's otherwise hyper-masculine tone. His characters were jittery, eccentric, and often overlooked, mirroring how Wells felt in real life. Though he found fame as Luigi in the Super Mario Bros. Super Show and Charlie the Bartender in The Jeffersons, he was always cast on the fringe. Never the star, never the lead. Born in Montreal to Jewish parents, his childhood was spent in emotional isolation. His father abandoned the family early, and Danny was raised by his mother, who worked multiple jobs. He was mocked for his high-pitched voice and nervous tics, often eating lunch alone and developing a deep-seated sense of invisibility. Acting became his only escape. But behind the scenes, Wells faced a barrage of rejections. Casting directors dismissed him as too weird, and his attempts at serious dramatic roles were often laughed off. He was rumored to have battled depression for most of his adult life, occasionally disappearing from productions for days without explanation. A failed animated series in the late 90s cost him hundreds of thousands, and he was later sued by a business partner who accused him of embezzlement from their joint studio venture. The case was settled quietly, but the fallout cost him nearly all his work in Los Angeles. Wells retreated to Toronto, shunned by former colleagues who saw him as unstable. His romantic life was just as chaotic. He never married, but had a string of relationships that ended in heartbreak. One partner described him as sweet but unreachable, haunted by feelings of inadequacy and rejection. He died of cancer on November 28, 2013, at the age of 72 in Toronto, far from the limelight. Though his estate included some royalties and a small apartment, his net worth was modest, reportedly under $500,000. Jack Ging was born on November 30, 1931, and stepped into the role of General Harlan Bull Fulbright on the A-Team in 1985, also at the age of 54. A hard-nosed military figure who evolved from relentless pursuer to tragic ally, Fulbright's death in the series was one of the rare moments the A-Team truly confronted mortality. Ging, however, lived a life haunted by his own inner shadows. Raised in rural Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl era, Jack's childhood was steeped in hardship. His father abandoned the family, and his mother worked grueling hours to survive. He was bullied mercilessly for being poor, and he often hid in school closets to avoid beatings. Though he rose to fame as a football hero and later transitioned into acting, Ging never escaped his deep insecurities. His Hollywood journey was stifled by typecasting, and his attempts to break into lead roles were repeatedly crushed by studio politics and his own combative nature. A notorious perfectionist, he clashed with co-stars and was once removed from a film set after a heated altercation with the director. Though less publicized, his personal life was chaotic. His first marriage dissolved after allegations of infidelity and emotional abuse, and one of his sons was reportedly estranged for years due to irreconcilable personal differences. By the early 90s, Ging had become disillusioned with Hollywood, retreating into obscurity. He passed away on September 9, 2022, in La Quinta, California, at the age of 90 from natural causes. His estate, modest compared to Hollywood standards, was estimated at $2 million, including a small ranch and residuals from past television work. Though remembered by fans for his principled on-screen persona, Ging died with the quiet ache of a man who never quite felt seen, despite standing tall in front of the camera. Alan Fudge was born on February 27, 1944, and appeared in the A-Team in 1983, portraying Elliot Farnell and Frank Gaines at age 39. Though his screen time was limited, he brought an unsettling intelligence and bureaucratic menace that made his characters memorable. Cold, calculated, and elusive, his roles served as strategic friction points to the team's operations, earning both disdain and fascination from viewers. Behind his crisp performances lay a childhood marked by deep emotional suppression. Raised in a conservative Kansas household, Fudge was bullied for his artistic nature and endured a distant relationship with an authoritarian father. He sought refuge in literature and classical theater, but his need for approval haunted him. Despite a solid resume including Broadway and supporting roles in major films, Fudge struggled to break into leading man status. His career hit a humiliating low in the late 80s after he was abruptly dropped from a promising TV pilot for being too cerebral and not commercially appealing. Friends recalled he privately battled resentment toward casting directors, and in later years he became increasingly withdrawn. Though publicly scandal-free, insiders spoke of his controlling attitude in rehearsals and habit of rewriting lines unapproved, which led to friction with producers. His personal life was equally complex. His long-term marriage was strained by alleged infidelity, and his only son reportedly distanced himself for years after a series of bitter arguments. Fudge died on October 10, 2011, in Los Angeles from lung and liver cancer at age 67. He left behind a modest estate, including a small home in Sherman Oaks, a classic car collection, and vintage theater memorabilia. His estimated net worth at death was roughly $400,000. Though never a household name, his final years were filled with regret that he never became the leading man he once dreamed of becoming. Anthony James was born on July 22, 1942, and appeared in the A-Team in 1984 at the age of 42, playing two chilling roles, Connors and Flag. Known for his gaunt features, towering 6 feet 6 inches frame, and hollow-eyed menace, James made a career out of playing the darkest kind of villains. But while audiences saw only malevolence on screen, his real life was haunted by psychological torment, isolation, and artistic desperation. Raised by a Greek immigrant mother in near poverty in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, James was bullied mercilessly for his appearance and accent. His birth name was James Anthony, not Anthony James, but he reversed it, seeking to reinvent himself after fleeing the South. Hollywood never fully embraced him. He was typecast as a creep, a killer, a nobody, frequently told by casting directors that he was too weird to play normal men. The roles he landed were often one-note, thankless, and soul-draining. His lowest career point came when he was cast in Burnt Offerings, 1976, as the ghostly chauffeur, a role so disturbing that James claimed it sparked recurring nightmares and mild psychosis. He began painting obsessively after that role, saying in interviews that acting made him feel like a shadow of a person. Though never involved in traditional Hollywood scandal, James lived like a recluse. He never married, never publicly dated, and devoted his life entirely to his mother Marika, who lived with him until her death in the late 1990s. After her passing, he withdrew even more, turning to art and poetry as his only outlets. He self-published a brutally honest memoir, Acting My Face, in 2014, detailing the humiliation of being reduced to a living gargoyle by the industry. His book sold modestly but gained a cult following for its stark honesty. In his final years, he was reportedly battling a recurrence of cancer and severe loneliness. He died on May 26, 2020, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the age of 77 from cancer. His estate, modest and privately managed, included original artwork valued by collectors, though his total net worth was never publicly confirmed. William Lucking was born on June 17, 1941, and stepped into the role of Colonel Lynch in the A-Team in 1983 at age 42, a military bloodhound chasing the rogue squad with futile aggression. His portrayal blended rigidity with a touch of comic futility, but Lucking himself was anything but predictable. A brooding intellectual with a razor-sharp tongue, Lucking was known in the industry for being uncompromising, often crossing swords with producers over creative differences. One infamous clash on a separate project led to his firing mid-production, after he reportedly stormed off set and punched through a trailer door. Raised in a conservative Midwestern family, Lucking rejected his roots, embracing counterculture movements in the 60s and becoming a self-proclaimed anarchist in his youth. His marriages were equally turbulent. His first wife accused him of emotional cruelty and controlling behavior, And though the court records were sealed, industry insiders whispered of an ugly divorce settlement that nearly bankrupted him in the early 90s. Though he found redemption later as co-founder of the Santa Paula Theater Center, his relationship with his daughters remained strained for years due to his unpredictable temperament and emotional distance. Lucking died on October 18, 2021, in Las Vegas at age 80 after years of battling various health issues. His exact net worth remains undisclosed, but his assets, spanning modest property holdings, screen residuals, and a few unpublished manuscripts, suggest a quiet but secure legacy. A giant on screen, William Lucking's true battle was always internal, a lifelong war between rage and redemption. Morgan Woodward was born on September 16, 1925, and took on dual roles in the A-Team in 1983, Bus Carter and Captain Winnetka, at the age of 58. In true Woodward fashion, both characters bore the hallmarks of his trademark screen presence: commanding, intimidating, and uncompromising. But while his steely stare and deep Texas drawl defined his Hollywood brand, his real life unraveled into a labyrinth of contradictions. Behind the strongman facade stood a complex figure, haunted by the battlefield, emotionally distant in his personal relationships, and driven by an obsession with perfection. A World War II and Korean War veteran, Woodward returned from combat bearing invisible scars, including rumored untreated PTSD that led to intense mood swings and prolonged periods of isolation. Despite holding degrees in law and finance, he often expressed frustration at the intellectual condescension of the Hollywood elite, once telling a friend, "They only see the cowboy, never the man." His marriage to Enid Ann Loftus was not without turbulence, marked by long periods of separation and whispered infidelities. Though he mentored younger actors, many feared his volatile temper. One former co-star described him as brilliant but a ticking time bomb. He was briefly embroiled in a land dispute scandal in the late 80s that nearly derailed his career. Woodward died on February 22, 2019, in Hollywood Hills, California, at the age of 93 from natural causes. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at an astonishing $49 million, much of it from wise investments in California real estate and oil leases. An empire built quietly while Hollywood saw only the gunslinger. Behind the camera, the man was far more ruthless than the villain. Sergio Calderon, born July 21, 1945, took on the roles of El Cajon and the Coffin in the A-Team in 1983 at the age of 38. Though his appearances were brief, Calderon's portrayal of unpredictable and flamboyant villains left a lasting impression on viewers. His characters radiated a peculiar charm. Dangerous, yes, but oddly endearing. That uncanny ability to mix menace with mischief became his trademark across decades of television and film. Raised in Coatlan del Rio in a poverty-stricken household, Calderon's early life was riddled with hardship. His father, a laborer, died when Sergio was only 9, leaving his mother to raise 6 children alone. Sergio was bullied at school for his indigenous features and heavy accent. From a young age, he used impersonations and storytelling to escape ridicule, masking pain with humor. Though he showed early talent, the idea of becoming an actor was considered absurd in his village. Still, Calderon pushed through, leaving home as a teen and enrolling at the prestigious Instituto Andrés Soler in Mexico City, a move that alienated him from much of his family. Despite being classically trained, Calderon was often typecast in Hollywood as the foreigner, the thug, or the eccentric villain. Studios rarely gave him dignified roles, and his heavy accent was mocked by American producers. There was resentment within the industry over how he was treated, passed over for awards, paid far less than white co-stars, and excluded from press junkets. Calderon's personal life was turbulent beneath the surface. Though married to Karen Dakin, insiders claimed the relationship endured long separations and quiet estrangement. He was devoted to his 2 children, but friends noted he carried deep guilt over years lost on the road and on set. In 2010, he suffered a near-fatal heart attack, but kept it secret from the public, continuing to work through pain and fatigue. He passed away on May 31, 2023, in Los Angeles from pneumonia at the age of 77. At the time of his death, he owned a modest home in the San Fernando Valley and several pieces of rare Mexican folk art. His net worth was never officially disclosed, though it's estimated to have been between $500,000 and $1 million. Surprisingly modest for a man with 6 decades in show business. Anthony James was born on July 22, 1942, and appeared in the A-Team in 1984 at the age of 42, playing 2 chilling roles, Connors and Flag. Known for his gaunt features, towering 6 feet 6 inches frame, and hollow-eyed menace, James made a career out of playing the darkest kind of villains. But while audiences saw only malevolence on screen, his real life was haunted by psychological torment, isolation, and artistic desperation. Raised by a Greek immigrant mother in near poverty in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, James was bullied mercilessly for his appearance and accent. His birth name was James Anthony, not Anthony James, but he reversed it, seeking to reinvent himself after fleeing the South. Hollywood never fully embraced him. He was typecast as a creep, a killer, a nobody, frequently told by casting directors that he was too weird to play normal men. The roles he landed were often one-note, thankless, and soul-draining. His lowest career point came when he was cast in Burnt Offerings, 1976, as the ghostly chauffeur, a role so disturbing that James claimed it sparked recurring nightmares and mild psychosis. He began painting obsessively after that role, saying in interviews that acting made him feel like a shadow of a person. Though never involved in traditional Hollywood scandal, James lived like a recluse. He never married, never publicly dated, and devoted his life entirely to his mother Marika, who lived with him until her death in the late 1990s. After her passing, he withdrew even more, turning to art and poetry as his only outlets. He self-published a brutally honest memoir, Acting My Face, in 2014, detailing the humiliation of being reduced to a living gargoyle by the industry. His book sold modestly but gained a cult following for its stark honesty. In his final years, he was reportedly battling a recurrence of cancer and severe loneliness. He died on May 26, 2020, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at the age of 77 from cancer. His estate, modest and privately managed, included original artwork valued by collectors, though his total net worth was never publicly confirmed. Joffrey C. Brown, born on January 22, 1945, appeared in the A-Team in 1983 as a bartender and one of Garber's thugs at the age of 38. Though his on-screen roles were often minor, Brown was a true force behind the scenes, renowned for his groundbreaking work as an African-American stuntman in a racially segregated Hollywood. His presence in the A-Team brought a visceral, physical intensity rooted in years of experience putting his body on the line for others' fame. He was born in Grambling, Louisiana, into a family deeply impacted by poverty and systemic discrimination. Raised in a neighborhood rife with violence, he reportedly witnessed his cousin being shot at age 11 and endured years of physical abuse from his stepfather. These early traumas were hidden behind a tough exterior that followed him throughout life. After briefly pitching for the Chicago Cubs, a career-ending shoulder injury forced him to abandon his dreams of baseball. With no safety net, Brown entered the world of Hollywood stunts, where he became both a pioneer and a pariah. He doubled for major stars like Morgan Freeman and Denzel Washington. But behind the success lay a volatile temperament. He was known to explode at directors, once allegedly throwing a monitor off a set after a stunt was poorly coordinated. Though he received the Taurus Lifetime Achievement Award, there were murmurs of misconduct, including a long-rumored assault case in 1992 that was reportedly settled quietly out of court. His personal life was no less chaotic. He married twice, both times ending in scandal. His first wife filed domestic abuse allegations, while his second left him after discovering he had fathered at least 2 children outside the marriage. One of those children, a son, later served time for armed robbery, a source of deep shame for Brown. Friends claimed he became emotionally withdrawn in his final years, haunted by guilt and battling alcohol dependency. Brown died on January 11, 2014, in Newhall, California, at the age of 68 from complications related to cancer treatment. Despite working on over 400 productions, His estate was relatively modest, valued at around $500,000, including union benefits and royalties. Michael Aldred was born on April 13, 1941, and took on roles like Colonel Twill and Don in the A-Team in 1983 at the age of 42. His presence on screen was imposing. His gruff demeanor and intimidating gaze made him the go-to for military hardliners and morally gray enforcers. In the world of the A-Team, he provided the kind of stoic antagonism that made the heroes shine brighter. But Aldred's off-screen life was far murkier than his composed appearances suggested. Born in a working-class family in California's oil fields, he faced a tumultuous upbringing marred by domestic violence and poverty. Acting became an escape, but Hollywood was never kind to men who didn't fit the heartthrob mold. He often got typecast and missed out on bigger roles, something he frequently blamed on elitist casting circles. His most damaging career blow came in the early 90s when he was quietly blacklisted by a major network after a drunken altercation on set involving a co-star's assistant. Though the story never made headlines, it cost him several jobs. Aldred struggled with alcoholism for much of his life, sometimes showing up on set disoriented, which led to whispered complaints among crew members. His marriage to costume designer Linda R. Aldred was fraught with volatility, and close friends say she once left him for 6 months after a particularly violent outburst. They reconciled, but the damage never fully healed. The couple never had children, and Aldred became increasingly isolated in his later years. He died from lung cancer on December 19, 1997 in Los Angeles at age 56. His estate included a modest Hollywood Hills condo, some residual royalties from past projects, and a lifetime of unfulfilled artistic ambition. His net worth at the time of death was estimated at $300,000. In the end, Aldred was a man whose inner battles mirrored the hardened men he so often portrayed. Only no camera was there to shout, "Cut." Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from the A-Team who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.